Hey English 101 students, this is Eric with a video lesson on naming clear actors and actions. This is a sort of review and expansion of what you learned in lesson 3 from our textbook style. So I'm hoping that what I offer here is going to take the things you learned in style and hopefully explain them in different words and maybe clearer words for you, and we'll work through a few examples together. The point of this lesson is to help you revise sentences to identify clear specific actions and clear specific actors. The word I really want to emphasize here is this one, revise, because I am not expecting you to be able to write these kinds of sentences when you're drafting. When sentences are coming from your brain onto the page or through the keyboard, I'm not expecting you to be able to write the best sentence right away. So if you don't have clear specific actors and actions in your sentences when you first write them, that's fine. That's normal. If we could do that, then we wouldn't have to learn what we're learning today. This is really about how you revise sentences. So, what are we talking about? Let's look at an example. Take a minute to read this sentence to yourself. Now, read this other version of the same sentence. Think about which sentence you like better. Note that both of these sentences have pretty much the same content or information. Note also that both of these sentences are perfectly grammatically correct. Yes, it's true that you can write a perfectly correct sentence that also kind of is crappy. As in, I would say, the case of the first sentence. This sentence to me is very wordy and feels backwards and just in general hurts my brain. Whereas this sentence down here goes down smooth. You might say it has a flow to it. This sentence does what we're going to learn about today, which is it puts its best actor into the subject of the sentence, here, Dr. Frankenstein, and it puts its best action into the verb of the sentence, which is right here, gathered. Actually, we have 3 verbs with 3 great, vivid, specific actions. So those great, vivid, specific actions are in the verb slots. The great, vivid, specific actor is in the subject slot. Here, the subject of this sentence is this entire phrase. The complex subject is an experiment undertaken by Dr. Frankenstein. That is too large, too abstract of a subject. The verb, the highlighted action here is resulted in, which is not a very vivid or specific action as compared to gathered, sowed, gave life. So all these words are in this sentence, they're just in the wrong place. So we've got to find those clear specific actors and actions, and we've got to highlight them by making them the subjects and verbs in our sentences. This slide, I think, might help you understand the difference because the sentence is a little simpler. If your actors and your actions are in the right place, if your actor is the subject, your clearest, most specific actor, if it's the subject, and your clearest, most specific action is your verb, you're probably in good shape. As in the sentence, we discussed the problem. Very clear, very straightforward. A not so good version of that sentence is up here at the top. The problem was the topic of our discussion. Again, nothing wrong with this sentence technically, there are no errors, but it feels kind of backwards and strange. That's because its clearest, most specific actor and action are here buried in at the end of the sentence rather than being in those subject and verb slots. Take out we from our discussion and discuss a nice, clear, specific action and put it in the verb slot, and you've got this nice, clear, specific sentence with fewer words. Okay, so what's the process? How do we do this when we're looking at a sentence that we've written? And again, when we're doing this, we're in the revision phase. We're not looking at a blank page. Because if you try to do this before you write the sentence, you're going to get stuck. So write the sentence, and if it's awkward and backward, that's fine. Then you can just go back and revise it. So the first thing to do is to identify the possible actions that could be at the center of your sentence. In other words, find all the possible actions in that sentence, wherever they might be. We always have options when we're putting together a sentence, and we just want to identify what our different options are. Where do we look for actions? They might be buried in nouns. In the chapter you read in style, those are called nominalizations. So in this sentence, two nominalizations are procrastination and failure. Buried in those nouns are nice actions, nice potential verbs. So you could revise it to be a great sentence like, he failed because he wasted too much time. So we extract the nice, clear, specific action there and here, and we end up reversing them. Although, again, that's an option. You don't necessarily have to do that. You might also, if you can't find any actions buried in other places, you can make some up, while, of course, still keeping the basic point of the sentence. So here's a sort of backward sentence. Victory was the outcome for the White Knight. Perfectly correct, but not very good, right? The White Knight thrashed and humiliated his opponent. Awesome, specific actions right there in those key highlighted verb slots, making the sentence much more direct, much more vivid. This is a better sentence, right? Anytime we have is or was, we can probably do better, and we can hunt for better actions in that sentence and to put in the verb slot, such as in this example. So what I'd like you to do is to pause this video for, I don't know, 2-3 minutes, and take this sentence at the bottom, this practice sentence, and give it a shot. Look for actions that are buried in that sentence, and then put them in the verb slots. Okay, move them around to make this sentence better, clearer, more direct. Okay, try pausing now. When you press play again, we will review possible options with this sentence. Okay, we're going to give this a shot. You can see on my left I have that slide we were looking at, and on my right I have the sentence in Microsoft Word so we can play around with it. So our first guideline, the first guideline that I gave you guys, is to identify the actions, all the possible actions in a sentence that you want to revise. Here, the action that's highlighted is was. It's not a very vivid, specific action, right? The other one in the second clause is made, which is okay, but we can do better. So what are the other possible actions here? A bunch of them pop out at me. Hope is a possible action, as in Lincoln hoped. Preserve is a possible action. Let me write these down. Hope, preserve. The big one that I notice is attack. That's a missed opportunity. So what we can do is we can revise the sentence to put those clearer, more specific actions in the verb slot. So, and replacing that was. So for example, probably the simplest way to do it would be to turn that hope into a verb by saying Lincoln hoped. And maybe we could make this to preserve. And then in the second part, we have to make attack that verb. Again, it's not have to in a technical right and wrong sense, but it seems like the logical way to go. So why not say, when the South attacked Fort Sumter, and add another verb, war became. Right? Now notice the difference between the first version of the sentence and the second. First, second. In this one, those actions are made into verbs rather than being hidden elsewhere. If you want to really hear the difference between the two sentences, I suggest reading them out loud. So that example helped us work through how do we take actions and move them into that key verb slot. Now we're going to talk about actors, although as we do either of these, actors or actions, a lot of times the other one is going to be moved into the right slot anyway. But it's worth looking at one more example. So, guidelines are similar. We want to identify all the possible actors in the sentence and choose the ones that we think are most clear and specific and vivid. Remember that actors can be people, and maybe also in a best case scenario they're people often, but they can also be things, places, concepts, anything that can act. Although as we get more and more abstract into the realm of things, we want to kind of be careful there and see if we can push towards the more specific, more vivid, more concrete. So for example, in this sentence, our subject is not a very clear actor. The subject here is the quality of the essay. And note that because we have a blah actor, we also have a very blah action in is. So this needs revision clearly. So a better version, I think, would be the essay is good. Although in that we still have a blah action in the verb slot. So why not? I prefer the essay rocks. Clear specific actor in the subject slot, clear specific action in the verb slot. I like it. So we will have one more practice sentence here. Give this one a shot. Pause it, take 2 or 3 minutes, identify all the possible actors in there, and take the ones that you think are the clearest and most specific and vivid and move those into the subject slot. All right, let's give this a shot. So on the left, again, we've got the original version of the sentence. I've copied it into the Microsoft Word document on the right, and we're going to play around with it. So what are the possible actors here? Here, the actor that comes up right up front is I, right? So that's a possibility, obviously. Students, right? A possibility. Writing could be another possibility, right? So we have I, we have students, we have writing. There's also some invisible ones, some ones that are kind of buried in between the lines. Colleges, right, are possible actors in this sentence. Tutors, to dig even a little bit deeper. There are lots of it. We could probably keep going with this, but let's just go with that for now. But we could make different versions of the sentences of this exact sentence by putting all of these different actors in the subject slot and seeing what happened. But the one thing I do want to point out here is that the current actor that's up front, I, what does I really have to do with the content of the sentence? To me, this whole shebang here has almost nothing to offer. Like if we take that out, does the meaning of the sentence change here versus here? I don't think so. And by putting students now in that highlighted first subject slot, I think the sentence becomes a lot clearer. And I actually like this actor in the subject slot, students entering college. Now you could also say many freshmen, although some people, ooh, that's wrong. Many freshmen, although some people would say that's sexist, right? So we might go with first year students instead. Let's just go with that. But then, so that's fine, right? Many first year students are in need of a lot of help with their writing. It's fine. It makes sense. It's correct grammatically. But now let's talk about actions, right? Well, I didn't ask you to look at those, but maybe you did anyway because you internalized the first lesson. But I think we would agree that this is a kind of an abstract action. Are in need of a lot of help. First of all, we talked about before, any is forms, is, are, was. It's really a signal that we could have a stronger, more clear, more specific action in there. For example, need. And I'm just taking out stuff we don't need. Many first-year students need help with their writing. Doesn't that seem better, more to the point than this? Maybe it's not going to help with your word count if you want to add some fluff, but man, it goes down smoother. And if you do this with every sentence in a piece of writing, it's going to make a huge difference in how that piece feels to the reader. It's going to earlier we talked about flow. The sentence flows better, right? And if we're reading 3 pages and every sentence flows like this, that paper is going to feel a lot better to the reader, perhaps the instructor, than the one that has sentences like these. And all we did was we spent a couple of minutes revising and thinking about different options with that sentence. Oh, and we didn't talk about the other possible options there, like if we were to make our actor colleges. Colleges need to help their incoming students with their writing. It creates a different emphasis, but it's still clear and direct, depending on what the topic of your paper was or who you were addressing. So there's always different options with sentences, and these exercises are just meant to start opening your minds. But if there's one thing that you get out of this lesson. It's that you need to revise your sentences. Revise, revise, revise. Can I underline this and make it bold? And let's make it like red. You need to revise your sentences, because otherwise what you come up with at first is never, almost never going to be perfect or even good. You can always take that first thing that came out of your brain and make it better. It happens with me. It happens with all professional writers. If you don't go back and revise your sentences, they're going to be not all that great. But if you take just a little bit of time thinking about, for example, actors and actions, you can make a big difference. If you need more help with this, I suggest rereading the Lesson 3 in style or coming to see me during my office hours. Okay, thanks guys. I'll see you in class.